by the dull white light. She rested her fingers gently on the keys and looked down at them, aware that they were still shaking. She clenched her fists tightly, together, her heart thudding hard against her ribs. In the silence of the room, she could hear sounds drifting on the darkness. Sounds that she wished she couldn't hear. Sounds of pain, of suffering, of rage. And others she couldn't identify. Sounds she didn't want to identify. The hairs were standing up on the back of her neck, and as each new noise filtered through, she tried harder to shut them out, and to concentrate on the task before her, the one that had occupied her for the last half hour. How did you write a suicide note? Part 1. The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living. Cicero. 1. Lauren Davison brought the car to a halt and sat motionless behind the wheel for a moment. She looked across the huge car park towards the main entrance of St. Michael's Hospital, and she couldn't suppress the grin that now spread across her face. And she thought, why should she try to contain her joy? This would be her first day as head nurse in the hospital's maternity unit. Something she'd dreamed about since she first became a nurse, more than 12 years earlier. It had taken dedication, effort, and pure hard work. But all that had finally seen fruition. And as Lauren glanced at herself in the rearview mirror, she felt a swell of pride that it was impossible to contain. The position itself was like an affirmation of her abilities, but it also carried a significant salary increase, which was very welcome. At 35, Lauren felt that she and her husband were ready to expand in more ways than one. They had already committed to an extension on their house, and if everything went according to plan, that would shortly become a nursery. The extra money would certainly come in handy in more ways than one. Her husband had also just been promoted in his own right, and they were basking in each other's reflected glory somewhat. Life was pretty good at the moment, Lauren thought, smiling. No more secrets. She hesitated a moment, and then swung herself out of the car and sucked in a deep breath. Even the air seemed to taste sweeter today, Lauren told herself, smiling at her own homespun philosophizing. She walked briskly across the car park and through the main entrance of the hospital, waving to several colleagues during her short journey. The maternity unit was on the ground floor of St. Bridget's, accessed through a series of doors that could only be opened by staff, with the application of 4-digit codes changed every day. It was sad that the security had to be so stringent, but, as Lauren mused, they were caring for the most valuable possessions that any human being could ever have. Children. A future. She entered the unit and turned right towards the nurses' station and the small staff room beyond. There were 2 nurses inside the small room when she entered, both younger than herself, and both seated at a wooden table, sipping from mugs of tea. They all exchanged greetings and pleasantries, and Lauren gratefully accepted the mug of tea that was handed to her by the older of her 2 colleagues. Sandra McKay ran a hand through her bright red hair and retrieved some biscuits from the tin that stood close to the kettle. The other nurse, Paula Morgan, dabbed at her nose with a tissue, muttering that she thought she might have the beginnings of a cold. The other 2 women backed away from her theatrically, both laughing before returning to the more pressing matter of their morning tea. Another 10 minutes and Lauren checked her watch against the wall clock and made her way into the newborn room. There were up to 15 babies inside this room, each one housed in its own little clear plastic-sided cot. No matter how many times Lauren saw these small containers and their precious cargoes, she